I see the title of the show is something about ordinals. Like,
well, Max, you wanted to talk about
it.
You wanted to talk about
Max
ordinals.
has a comedy bit, I hope.
It's
or
kind
is
of
it-
like a comedy bit, kind of. It was like because I thought about it when I saw recently people were vandalizing the Mona Lisa in the Louvre. They're throwing soup at the Mona Lisa. And why do they do that? Because the Mona Lisa has been here for 500 years. It's the most viewed piece of art in the world. It'll be here another 500 years. And so if you get a photo of yourself throwing soup at the Mona Lisa, you become somewhat immortal yourself. You're that image of you being vandalizing this priceless work of art will be in the record. So ordinals are basically similar. Like there are people who are attaching or vandalizing or attaching graffiti or what have you to Bitcoin. And because Bitcoin's immortal and because Bitcoin is a beautiful piece of art that'll last for the rest of time, they are by association feel like they are somehow sharing in the spotlight of Bitcoin. And also these people who throw soup at the Mona Lisa, they have some kind of cause. Like they say, we're protecting the environment or we're protecting, the right, some activist rights.
Sure.
And same thing with ordinals people. They believe that they're doing something that's socially responsible. I forget exactly what they're trying to do, or say that they're doing. But they have some philosophical message behind it that even Aristotle.
There's a comedic one too. They pretend they're funny. They really, really think they're funny. And if you go see them, like they put on a wizard costume and go up on stage and say they're funny, and you're like, okay, this is not funny. But Jimmy Song just wrote about this.
Yeah.
And he compared it to Mastercoin, which, it's just an age-old trick, right?
Let's explain what an ordinal is first.
I don't think so.
No, it's just a JPEG.
It defies explanation. It's like
just
why he's on this. It's like garbage. That's
okay.
It's not even as simple as a JPEG. It's like a JPEG, but worse, like a degraded virtual reality AI version of it. And very complicated. Basically, you pay like a Bitcoin for one sat. Okay. And that,
wow.
I mean, that's funny, right? It's kind of funny that you can find like hundreds of people that willing to do that. It's like, it's like Times Square in the 70s or 80s, right? You can see some wacky things that tourists do.
The show world.
So it's like you're scamming Bitcoin tourists, right? You're selling them, you're taking 2 Bitcoin for them and giving them 1 sat, and they're like, and that's it. So, but we had something back in 2012 or 13 called Mastercoin, and they did a thing, or maybe it was a little bit later, but they raised a whole bunch of Bitcoin and introduced this layer called Mastercoin. And basically they never built anything, because that's the incentive model. That's the thing about Bitcoin, right? Is the incentive model is what keeps the whole system running. If you give somebody, here's Jeff Bezos level money for your idea of building Amazon. Would Jeff Bezos have built Amazon, or would Elon Musk have built SpaceX, Tesla, and all that stuff? If you said, here's 300 billion, he would have been like, especially as a young guy, you're maybe like, well, I'm just going to go be a playboy around the world.
I'll take the money. Thank you.
I'll be in Vegas.
Yeah.
Going to see Danny Gans.
And that's pretty much what always happens with those tokens that do a pre-sale. And so Mastercoin became an embarrassment, and they renamed it Omni. But that is like just this week. It's just like they're turning it off, essentially. It's over.
Oh, it's finally turning it off.
Yeah, basically, because the only thing it was still used for was some tether, but that's gone. There's, that's basically what we're seeing with the ordinals. It's just a second layer. They're trying to promote a second layer. They're trying to pretend they're comedians, and they're like a woman comedian, basically. What Max is saying.
It's the latest scam, essentially. But I like it's like vandalism, in that regard. But
so Max prefers his analogy better.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that. I'm like thinking about it when I think about it in trying to come up with something, this is kind of what I come up with. But at the bottom of the whole cesspool of it's worthless, stupid shit that will be forgotten soon and replaced with another scam. Like the scams keep coming. They just rename them. They give them a different name. Like Jimmy Song was saying, this is just Mastercoin with a different kind of.
Yeah, this is going to be this cycle though, because, the thing is the U.S. regulatory agencies and Department of Justice are all over anybody who creates one of these tokens now, right? So what they're doing instead is launching layer 2 on Bitcoin. They're using the name of Bitcoin because that's the only one that everybody in the world, even Wall Street, figured it out, that it's just Bitcoin. Bitcoin is where that Bitcoin is something special. And they might not understand, Wall Street, you know, Larry Fink might not understand why Bitcoin is special, but he knows that's the one to sell.
Right.
So
I mean,
the same
to that
thing,
point,
yeah.
the Ether was the coin that with NFTs that they were attaching the shit to, because
Yeah.
Ether still had a life. It still would look like it might be something. But now that it's just dropping like a stone against Bitcoin, all the scammers have migrated from ETH to Bitcoin.
So some of the bigger shitcoins, like this one called Tron, is just announced that they're moving on to Bitcoin. So they're layer 2 on Bitcoin. So this is going to be this cycle as when Bitcoin gets to 60,000, 70,000, 80,000, 100,000, 125,000. As it climbs up that parabolic ladder, you're going to see crazier and crazier stuff being offered on there. Max's yo-yos, like Duncan will probably start offering yo-yos on the blockchain, you know, on the Bitcoin blockchain in particular. And, you know, that's what you're going to see next. And it'll work. It's comedy in a way. People will continue to give a Bitcoin for one sat and not be able to add up the maths on that.
It's an affinity scamming and by association. And if you get some pump and dump, which is a tried and true way to try to extract money from losers, whether it's in a casino or elsewhere, you know, this is like another version of that. So it has this market, like the NFT market, which I don't know if you remember that even 2 years ago. And it was a pump and dump for about 18 months. And this company called Ocean, somebody or other, or something great, OpenSea, with a bunch of NFTs, and like all of them have dropped 95, 98, 99%. That's like basically it was just a pump and dump. This is another pump and dump. They're trying to affiliate scam Bitcoin, you know, to make it look like there's something, because all these other things are just now, everything against Bitcoin goes to zero, and same thing with Ether. So this is just the latest version of a scam.
Yeah, and I think what we're going to see too with the ETFs and everything, and with the price when it gets to 60 and up, I think you're going to have even more people getting into the space, which means more people ripe to get scammed.
Yeah.
Well, that's what Stacy says. The bear markets are difficult, but the bull markets are more difficult.
That's with El Salvador, what the Bitcoin office does, and what, you know, Max and I have been doing here for this whole time, is that's one of the things we do, is we try to convince the best and brightest to come adopt El Salvador as their headquarters, their home, their spiritual home, their real home, their physical home, to move here, to come here. And the thing that we benefit from is that we have been around forever. Like, we're old, we've been in Bitcoin since 2011. So we know the people who are, you know, smart enough, intelligent enough, good businessmen, agile enough to survive the bear markets. And those are pretty brutal. But more importantly, have survived like 4 or 5 of the bull markets, because that's the hardest. That's actually more difficult to survive in Bitcoin than the bear markets.
How so?
Because if you're a big name, if you are in any of those, you get tempted to be a scammer. Like, you're offered. The 2017 one was pretty crazy. I mean, we received daily 4 or 5 offers to Max. Max was, you know, this is before Saylor and all these big Wall Street names and stuff like that. There weren't that many huge names, famous names in Bitcoin. And Max was certainly super famous back then in terms of, you know, recognition, name recognition. So people were offering like 1,000 ETH or like huge numbers to promote all. And they were really like, you don't have to do a single thing. All we need is your name on our website and a photo of you. And they were offering a lot of money. And we know a lot of people who took that offer, and you know, none of them are around anymore. None of them in Bitcoin space. You know, individually, I guess some could work their way back if they are humble enough and, you know, admit their wrongdoing or whatever. But the higher up you go, whether it's a corporation or certainly a nation state, and that's why we do what we do, is because you can't make that kind of mistake as a nation state, right? Like, you can't get wrecked and humiliated in that sort of fashion. An individual can, and look, I mean, look at Barstool Sports guy, right? He's hysterical. He deals with it in the best way I've ever seen in terms of getting wrecked and just being so honest about it. Like, I'm such a fucking moron. What a fucking moron I am. And it's comedy. It's really good comedy. And if you could make people laugh at you and with you, then you could survive those. But, as like I said, as a nation state, it's kind of difficult to do something on the scale of like Barstool Sports get wrecked like that and just like, for the heads of state to come out and say, whoops, that was funny, wasn't it, guys?
Sorry.
Yeah, Dave Portnoy that's why he's successful, is that he has honesty. He's honest with himself.
Yes.
Successful people they cop to their mistakes and try to figure out why they made a mistake and how do I do better. The people who are not successful tend to be pretend like they never made the mistake. They want you to ignore that as a mistake, and they just do the same mistake over and over again and expect different results, right? And I think also on this 2017 period, 2016 period, which was the explosion of the scam of that era, the ICO, initial coin offering, this is when, and turning down all these deals, millions and millions of dollars to do all these deals, they had to say no. This was the beginning of Bitcoin maximalism for me, because it was at that point that I decided to, we're going to go down this path of Bitcoin only, Bitcoin maximalism, and try to develop a brand that is Bitcoin maximalism. What does that brand mean? And so then in 2020, when Michael Saylor appeared, he became the poster child really for Bitcoin maximalism. But I think it percolated up. I mean, the cypherpunks were always maximalist in their own way. And then 2017, 2016, we started to hew toward maximalism. And then I think Michael Saylor kind of coined the playbook for maximalism from 2020 going forward. I think that's how that kind of codified.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, that's sort of, I started to get in the space around 2019 and did the thing that a lot of people did. I heard about this coin and that coin and thought all crypto was the same. And then I started listening more to you. And then when Saylor came on, I was like, well, this guy, all he's talking about is Bitcoin. And I was like, huh. And then, as I've said before, when the two of you came on my show, which was like April of 2021, 3 years ago, and you were like, everything's a shit coin. I was like, even Ethereum? Come on, that's mean. And you were like, yep. And when you explained to me, because I understand how the government, the two-party system, and the ruling elites and the deep state work, when you said, well, you said to me, he goes, well, Ethereum could be on Amazon servers and the State Department could go shut it down. And I went, oh, because I know how they work. I know how the IMF, like we talked about it.
It's centralized.
They centralized.
It's centralized, therefore vulnerable. And to Stacey's point about being a nation state here in El Salvador, the maximalism, then into El Salvador became natural for the country to adopt a maximalist position as well, because it dovetails perfectly with the president and what he stands for and his idea of economic liberty. And also the calculation was made that Bitcoin maximalism, the benefits far, far outweigh a 10,000 to 1, any possible incremental gain by entertaining any shitcoin whatsoever. Cannot possibly add anything.
It's like economic sovereignty, right? You don't have economic sovereignty if you know who the boss is. Vitalik Buterin is there, and Joe Lubin and Ethereum. Solana and all those CEOs and marketing team. Like if those are the boss, right? Those guys are the bosses. So if you could point to the bosses and the marketing team and all of that around a coin, but I mean, I understand. So I understand, like, say Miami got trapped in this whole shitcoin thing, right? There are way more nicer people in shitcoins because they have to be. Like Ted Bundy had to be a nice, charming guy to get women to get into his car at night on campus, right? He had to be nice and charming. Bitcoiners don't need to be charming, and it's a survival mechanism to be toxic. Many species in nature are very toxic. They spew toxic poison like a little puffer fish because they don't want to be eaten, right? The same thing with Bitcoin. You don't want somebody who's super charming, super funny, super attractive to convince you to give them one Bitcoin for their sat and then run away with your Bitcoin and you're left holding nothing.
It's really, and the evidence is in there's data here to back this up because again, had you guys not, advised Bukele on this anti-shitcoin law, someone would have come in here and he's a smart guy, but who can know everything? Someone might have sweet talked him and he would have said, yeah, we're going to do Ethereum and this and that. And then
no. He wouldn't have done that.
Right.
He's too smart. But a government is made of tens of thousands of people.
Someone in the government.
But we just gave them a place to go, which is like the digital assets law. If it's not Bitcoin, then it's something else. It's a security, like in the US. I mean, it's not codified there, but Gary Gensler says it over and over. Bitcoin is a commodity, he calls it, and everything else is a security. And so we codified that. And what I was saying before, though, the marketing machines around those other coins to convince you to give them your Bitcoin and that you get their coin that they've magicked up. The marketing machine makes it look way more interesting to government sort of officials because they're like, look, you need 10,000 people to run our blockchain. So imagine all the jobs to run this complicated machine. And you're like, what's the complicated machine about? We don't know, but it's a complicated machine. And we, the owners, the CEOs of this blockchain, we get all the money, but you get to hire 10,000 people as long as and pay them in our token, which costs you nothing, by the way. We'll give some to you, and you could hire these people. So it seems like all their marketing terms and all their buzzwords are around like, futuristic, internet innovation jobs, all sorts of things like that most government officials look at. And Bitcoin's just there. Bitcoin is, and that's difficult to sell to many government officials.
Right, because it's not like, again, a lot of the altcoins have some sort of project, and we're going to do this blockchain with these smart contracts or whatever. And it sounds like, I've heard something, wow, this is really cool. They could do all this cool stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not a tech guy. That sounds great. And then you realize, no, it's a scam. And then you see in the long haul, and again, Bukele's proved this by, when El Salvador's bought all this Bitcoin. Yeah. And I'm sure he received criticism for that. Oh, he's gambling with the people's money when the price came down, and now the price is going back up.
Opposite of gambling.
Yeah.
If you think about it,
opposite.
It was securing it.
Yeah. But people didn't understand it. So they thought it was gambling, but he actually did the smartest thing of ensuring this country's financial sovereignty. We were saying this on the show like a week or two ago. In 10, 20 years, the citizens of El Salvador are going to be the richest people in the world.
Yes. And you used the operative word there was like you viewed it as tech. They pitch it as tech. And that's the thing that Bitcoin is not tech, really. It's money. Bitcoin is money. And a lot of people get confused about that. When the first tokens first started coming out, before they even did the ICO stuff, like pre-selling, Ethereum started that whole thing. And when people realized how much money they made from pre-selling their token, then obviously tens of thousands of coins soon followed. But before that, there were, a couple dozen coins that had emerged. And I thought like the computer guys who know how to code, they know better. And well, maybe there's going to be something interesting that comes out of that. Like, because it's a technology, it's like the internet, it's like a computer code, it's something geeks can do. But, at least it was the opportunity cost wasn't as high back then, or maybe it was because you could buy a Bitcoin then, you can get a Bitcoin then for like $5. Yeah. And instead you didn't, like you were involved in some stupid coin that it wasn't about the tech, it was about the money, right? But now it's the scams are way higher and more sophisticated and more targeted at vulnerable people.
The staking.
Well, it was the atmosphere is very silly. You create silly projects and they're silly in their own right, and it's kind of silly. It was Vitalik Buterin who attacked Bitcoin, and said that Ethereum is better. And then that left, it was not funny anymore. It wasn't silly. It wasn't a fun thing anymore. Then it became like a confrontational, so what we're saying is that Bitcoin needs toxicity, Bitcoin maximalism, and comedy needs toxicity as well. So the hardest Bitcoin maximalist, by that definition, will be the funniest, right? Yes. This is what keeps me so funny, because I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. And the toxicity of my humor, Therefore, it all works out in one Mobius strip, self-reinforcing, hard comedy, hard Bitcoin, hard money.
Bitcoin is hard money, right? So the thing that for comedy, so this is what you have to have a built-in bullshit detector to be a good comic, right?
Right.
Lenny Bruce said that. You have to. That's what most comics do. They sit there. Everyone's talking. The comic sits in the back of the room. That's bullshit. That person's full of shit. That's what a comic does. We started in school, and I was in the back of the classroom going, "This is dumb. Who's gonna ever use geometry? Trigonometry is stupid." And Graham, I led the league in detentions. And that's what we do. And Bitcoin is like, it's the ultimate bullshit detector.
In high school, I was the #1 tenant of the detention center. Okay. But I started my own TV show in the detention center called The King Kaiser Show. That's how it started. I was so often in the detention center. It's like, I'm going to make a TV show. And I did this. And you can find that online, by the way.
I'd love to see that.